So when we're building a nutritious plan, you have to understand three main things. These things are called macronutrients. There's protein, there's carbohydrates, and there are fats. These are so important because this is what you use to actually make up the meal. Now, there's also micronutrients, and you may have actually heard of macronutrients. You may have heard of counting calories. You may have heard of people who weigh their food, get a food scale, and eat a certain amount of times a day. It's so important to make sure you understand why you're doing that stuff, not just doing it for no reason, right? So first, what is protein? I like to consider protein as the building blocks that build the muscle. So if you were to build your own custom home, or maybe you're building a apartment complex or anything really, the foundation is the first thing that you actually start to build after you've gone to the architect and gotten your blueprint. I'm the architect. But let's fast forward a little bit. We're building the foundation. So the type of concrete that you decide to invest in is going to ultimately decide how strong that foundation is, right? Why would you want to put a huge home on a very weak foundation? So when you're building your muscle, you want to make sure that the food that you're putting in, specifically the concrete, is a very good concrete. And so I got a couple lists here, just some random ones I just kind of jotted down, but chicken, beef, turkey, fish. And I say those first because I will always believe it's best to get your protein sources from actual real animal meat sources. Now, can you get your protein from vegetables? You can. Can you get your protein from certain types of beans and legumes and stuff like that? Yes, you can. You also can get your protein from protein powders that you can buy from the grocery store. The only issue is those options of protein tend to come with a lot of other stuff. So if you're eating beans and trying to get protein from beans, if you look at the nutrition facts yourself, you'll notice that there's a much higher ratio from protein to carbohydrates. So you may get 9, 10, 15 grams of protein from some beans, but you're also going to have to deal with 30 to 40 to 50 grams of carbohydrates. We're going to get into carbs in a second, but remember, we're specifically looking for protein. You can get chicken thigh versus chicken breast, and now you're going to have a much higher fat content in that chicken thigh versus a chicken breast, which is very lean. So again, there's a big difference between your different protein sources. Some of them will come with carbohydrates, some of them will come with fats. And the only issue with protein powders is you have to understand that a protein powder is a supplement. So they literally created that. I think that protein powders are great when it comes to convenience. When it comes to really, that's the biggest thing, convenience. Like maybe you're too busy and you can't get 5, 6, 7 meals in a day, and it's easier to drink 2 or 3. Or maybe I had dental issues. I had a lot of dental issues last 2 years ago, and I'm finally getting to the end of that and making more progress and all that stuff. It's great. But if you've ever had dental issues, you know, when it comes time to chew, it can be very difficult. So what I had to do, I was blending a lot of my stuff up, drinking protein shakes just because it was convenient for that time period. However, I never want to get into a position where I am like dramatically reliant on protein shakes. A lot of the protein shakes out there also do have tons of other additives in them. So you're getting more than you're really bargaining for. And since I'm talking about that real quick, I know that some of you may be looking at the protein powders that come with, for example, whey protein or whey isolate protein. The reason we want to do the isolate is because it's going to give you exactly what you need. Just think of the word like this is isolated to specific whey proteins. I'm not going to have to deal with anything extra in the actual shake. So if you are getting whey protein out there, make sure you get the whey isolate. And then second, if you're out there buying mass gainers are loaded with carbs and loaded with fats. I'm going to tell you exactly why that's a problem when we move on. So again, those recommendations, chicken, fish, beef, turkey, you probably have some others you're thinking of right now. And if you are thinking of proteins coming from bean sources and such like that, just remember you're also getting extra carbohydrates. So you have to do something about that. So what are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates, by definition, really good for energy. They're basically sugar. It's converted to glucose and glycogen, and the muscle actually uses that. The brain operates off of that as well. So really good when it comes to fueling the body. The only problem is there's a certain amount that you can put into the system, And then anything else is just going to it's going to be spillover. And what we like to call that is water retention. So if you're getting too many carbohydrates in your diet, your body is literally going to soak up the water that you're drinking from your foods as well. And it's just going to hold that water. So it's kind of like, if you fill up your car too much with gasoline, it's just going to spill over the edge, but then it's going to just go off the car and into the floor. It's not going to necessarily make the car bloated. We will get bloated. We will retain water, and that's going to slow you down. So remember, carbohydrates are for energy. I love carbohydrates. I'm never going to be the coach that says you can't have carbohydrates. I just want you to understand what they do and why you need them. So carbohydrates are, like we said, really good for energy. So it's really good to help you get through a workout. It also, post-workout, we do need to refill those glycogen stores in the muscle to help the body then recover. Because you're working out, and you ever worked out your arms or your chest or back or legs even, and you can feel them pumped for like the next 3-4 hours? You literally need to put glycogen into the muscle to be able to make sure that it actually recovers and has the fuel that it needs to recover. The challenge with that is, again, if it's too much, it puts you in a situation where you just have too much carbohydrates. So again, like we said, you're going to have that spillover and that water retention. Now, there's simple carbs and complex carbs. I don't want to get too crazy into that, but I like to think of it, how can we make it easy? Like, think about simple carbohydrates as a very simple process to break down. Whereas complex carbohydrates is a little bit more difficult, and it's a little bit more of a process to break down. So let's just use a real quick example. Simple carbohydrates would be like your fruit juice or fruit itself, or maybe even some vegetables. Where a complex carbohydrate, a couple lists here, we've got oats, rice, pasta, even the beans we talked about, veggies we already talked about, but brown rice, quinoa, ton of different stuff. Spelt, if you've ever tried that. Basically, complex carbohydrates that are definitely going to take some time to break down. So you need to know when to put it in. For me, like, I'm thinking pre-workout. We're going to talk about when to eat soon, but just because I'm on this one right here, pre-workout, I love to have rice cake with jelly on top. So the rice cake is my complex carbs that I plan on using for fuel like 45 minutes into the workout. And then the jelly is my simple carbohydrate, something that's going to kind of give me a quick pre-workout feel. I don't like pre-workouts. I don't recommend pre-workouts. There's so many different companies out there. You have no idea what's in that stuff. And sometimes you have no idea what it's doing to your heart long-term. So I would rather, in the beginning, you learn how to use your food as a pre-workout. Learn how to time your meals so that you're not loaded with food pre-workout, you're not bloated, and you have the fuel that you need. Then when you decide to take it to a much more advanced level, then use your pre-workout. But if you haven't figured out your diet, if you haven't figured out your food, you should not be spending that 30, 40, 50 bucks on that little can of pre-workout as your booster, right? You should be able to know how to boost yourself based on the food that you're eating. So let's move on to fats. Fats can also be used for energy. You may have heard of the ketogenic diets and stuff such out like that. The issue with that, we won't even talk about an issue. It's specifically energy. You can use fat as energy. Fat is better, though, for helping you absorb minerals and vitamins and nutrients that you're eating in your food. Really good for absorption, but then also really good for helping cushion your joints and make sure that the joints can move nice and fluid. So at no point, if you're trying to get in shape, at no point should you be cutting your fats to zero because you need them. At no point should you be cutting your carbs to zero because you need them. And you definitely need to get your protein in. So the idea of I need to eat less to lose weight is the exact opposite. And it's going to throw your body into something that we call starvation mode.